at a certain point, the bottom of the barrel had been reached for candidates to be president or Secretary General of the World Future Studies Federation. And my folks in Hawaii said, well, we'll do it. We'll be the Secretariat. And I got to be Secretariat of the Federation. And then, again, not having any other viable candidates apparently for president, I got to be president of it. So during that period, which is in the 1980s, I got to go to all sorts of countries all over the world and talk with people in my capacity as president of that organization, with leaders and ordinary folks about the future. But if you know anything about that ancient period, it was also a period of unrest and concern about the future of communist states. And I was invited to every communist country, except one or two in Southeast Asia. So I went to all communist countries, including, as I say, North Korea. And if you want to have a really interesting story, I can tell you how I got in and, more importantly, got out of that country without too many people in the federal government trailing behind me. And so I got to see, by talking with these people, one of my most prized possessions is shaking hands with Li Peng, a photograph of me shaking hands with Li Peng, the Prime Minister of China in 1988, and Tiananmen Square episode happened shortly thereafter. Not cause and effect, just together. And so I really got to meet extraordinarily important people who were telling me, my goal is to shop at Macy's. This is the head of the Communist Leninist Institute in Bulgaria telling me that's his goal. And many would say to have fresh fruit in winter is my main goal. And so there I could see, I came back and talked about this happening, and people, you don't know what they're talking about, it's not happening. None of us foresaw the collapse. None of us foresaw the peaceful, quick collapse of communism. That something was happening, and we sort of thought it was convergence. We thought the two systems were converging as a likely alternative. But the collapse of communism without fighting after 30 years of preparing for nuclear holocaust, and they simply stopped. One day they stopped. You can't, if you weren't there, you can't believe how stunned you were that people just suddenly decided, no, not communist. No, not communist. And they didn't kill each other, except for Yugoslavia. That's another horrible story. And part of the story is Yugoslavia, because I learned, I always knew, but I learned very deeply and personally that it's the duty of the futurists to always say, what's next? What's next? And the futurist curse is, may your dreams come true. And then, what's next? So we had prepared, we had not prepared the people of East Asia for the question of what's next. They were so focused on a highly romantic view of what it would be like without communism that when that opportunity suddenly came, they couldn't grasp it. And the multinational corporations came in and ate up whatever freedom and opportunities they might have had to do something different, as most of them wanted to do. So a return of old animosities and all sorts of external control, so that many people would argue they're worse off now than they were under communism in many ways. So that's one of the most important lessons that I learned. You have to always ask what's next. You have to, as the futurist, you have to be able to talk about what's lying beyond what most people are expecting the future to be. One final point is that in this process in Hawaii, in the early 70s, or immediately after the year 2000 conference was over, the Hawaii State Legislature created at the University of Hawaii the Hawaii Research Center for Future Studies. So the center was a state-funded, or at least state-established, it wasn't funded, that was the problem, a state-established futures research organization. in 1971. And I've been head of it since that time until I retired a year or two ago. And then in the early 70s, the Department of Political Science, which I was a member, wanted to create what they called, unfortunately, terminal MA degrees. And so one of the terminal degrees was in future studies, and it was designed to have a 1 year of academic work and 1 year of internship in an existing futures research firm. And we worked primarily with Clem Bezol's group at the Institute for Alternative Futures that I helped establish as well. And most of the students went there, but they went to other places as interns as well. Always paid interns. That was an important point from my perspective. And then usually people discovered one of two things. Either they made a connection with some futures organization or with other young futurists and went out on their own. And so I have some fabulous students that graduated with MA degrees that I'm sure are members of this organization. They're not here right now. And so for the intention of the program was terminal MA professional consulting futures. But Hawaii being Hawaii, it's a roach motel. People come in, but they never go out. And so they would join the program and get a PhD, many of whom then were consultants, like Kaipo Lum and Wendy Schultz and many others with a PhD. But many of those PhDs then went into more traditional teaching with future studies, either part or not part of their bag of tricks. So if you look at what made me a futurist, it is, first of all, being in a place like Hawaii, so unlike any other place in the world. I might add that when I went to Hawaii, my friend said, "Goodbye, Jim. We'll never see you again." 1969, we'll never see you again. It's been nice knowing you. And it's reasonable to feel that way because the airplane that I flew on, I was in Detroit for a variety of reasons, to San Francisco, had to stop in Salt Lake City because of mechanical problems. And the plane that I took from San Francisco to Honolulu lost 2 of its 4 engines over the Pacific. So flying was a little uncertain. And a little earlier, if you know anything about the Comet jet airplane, they routinely blew up. And so it was, first of all, better than being on a prop plane, which took a day to fly across the Pacific. But jets were still a little iffy. But eventually the 747 came along in 1970. Mass tourism happened. It became the cheapest place in the world to fly. Mile for mile, it was cheaper for me to fly anywhere in the world than for anybody in Europe to fly anywhere in Europe. It was just so cheap. And therefore, I was able to do a lot of flying because of the jet. And then I became a member of Murray Turof's Electronic Information Exchange System. How many of you were on that? I heard of it. Your granddaddy told you? So it was something set up in New Jersey by Murray Turoff on the basis of something he had developed, a computer network system he developed for the Office of Emergency Preparedness of the government, which was a super redundant computer-based program. And when he spun off of that, he created a number of people, about 10 or 15 around the world, that experimented with it, in which we phoned in to New Jersey and plunked our, speaking of the fax machine, plugged our receiver on a modem, and that we were connected. I had a Texas Instrument that had no memory, just no memory whatsoever. I could type in and out and then print out the conversation between us. But for the first time in my life, especially in the environment of Hawaii, where information floated over on boats, and it was really hard to be a futurist for a long period of time. Suddenly, I was getting information months ahead of all of my colleagues. You really either a crazy or a futurist, yes, you're right, about both of them. So that I would say the internet and the jet made it possible for me very early on to see what was going to happen to everyone all around the world as these things transpire. So that's basically all I wanted to say, except in response.
Yes, that was a long answer to a question.
I gave you an option and you made the wrong choice.
Now, you told me you wanted to have discussions, so
I do.
shall we go to that?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.